Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the latest episode of Gold and Guest Talk Tottenham. And as you can tell by the non-northern accent, I'm not Rob Guest. I am Lee Wilmot, head of football at football.london. I'm joined by Alasdair Gold because Guesty's working late this evening. He's doing a bit of a scouting mission on Alfie Devine and Ashley Phillips. He's going to watch Plymouth in action tonight. So plenty of content on those two, hopefully tomorrow morning on football.london. So keep your eyes peeled. So I'm stepping in today. Ali, how are you? A little bit under the weather, I understand.
I'm all right. I'm fine. It's just that kind of winter like blur that you get. I just love the fact that we've sent Guesty on a scouting mission. I just love the idea that he'd be. Was it Sheffield Wednesday they're playing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a little bit harsh on Guesty saying we've sent him on a scouting mission. It was his idea, to be fair.
This is true. Yes, he did want to abandon us in order to go and watch the stars of the future playing. Although I do hope for him that they're starting, because the last couple of games they haven't. So I hope we're not, Guesty's not making his way all the way there to Hillsborough to watch 8 minutes of Alfie Devine coming on, not touch the ball. But I'm sure they'll get back in the team. But yes, so slightly different voices today. Gold and Wilmot talk Tottenham. We've got a fair bit to talk about. Obviously, a victory. That's a very nice thing to be able to talk about. And some funny little Richarlison. Well, funny depending on who you are. Probably not so funny for Antonio Conte, but some Richarlison comments that have come out this week, and Emerson Royale, and yeah, loads of stuff we can talk about this week as well. And there was a special guest at the match as well on Saturday, which is an interesting one for the future, and Tottenham and potentially maybe young stars coming back and forth from Sweden. Yeah, loads for us to chat about today.
Yeah, so before we, I can't remember if I actually said, we are sponsored by NordVPN. I don't know if I said in my intro there, so just in case I didn't, I apologise, Nord. This podcast is still sponsored by NordVPN. Before we get into Crystal Palace at the weekend and another comeback win for Spurs, which seems to be the way under Ange Postecoglou at the moment. Some interesting quotes from Richarlison that have kind of reared their head this morning or yesterday, I think it might have been, that you've kind of checked out and made sure they've been verified and they did actually come from the Brazilian. Talk us through what he said and the story that's just gone live on football.london this morning.
So what happens is, especially Brazilian players, we kind of find at Spurs, they, I was going to say they go off a bit rogue. I don't know if that's too harsh, but essentially when they have journalists from their homeland come over, or even influencers, whatever, come over, they just crack on and say whatever they want, which is great for us as journalists. I can imagine the club are probably like, no, where are they gone now? So some quotes emerged on Twitter last night, and as we always have to do, because we're not just going to chuck anything out there, had to kind of double check that they actually were, from where we thought they were, and they were, because you can actually watch it on YouTube. There's a Brazilian YouTuber called Fred. I love the way Brazilian names are just kind of very poof to the point. They have about 3 or 4 or 5 different names, but actually they've just got a brilliant name that they have as their main one.
Not the former Manchester United midfielder, I assume.
No. He's a former futsal player who's appeared on Brazilian Big Brother and things like that in the past. So he came over and he was, I think, doing a bit of a roundup visit, watching all of the Brazilians in the Premier League over the weekend. And he met up with Emerson after the game, and Emerson invited him back to his house to go and have a chat with him and Richarlison, who's quite reluctant to do interviews, which is an interesting one. It's a bit like Danny Rose from the aspect of didn't do many interviews, but when they do, they're cracking. They're so good. There's so much kind of honesty in there. They don't hold back. And this very much seems to have been the case, although it's kind of Emerson's fault this time of what's come out. So Emerson told this little story about how Richarlison was late for a meeting on the day of a game last season under Antonio Conte. And Antonio Conte asked him to apologise to the rest of the group, as a couple of other players had done when they were late. It's fair to say Richarlison didn't quite understand what Antonio was asking of him. So I'm going to read you the quote, so it's not me just paraphrasing here. So this is Emerson. He arrived late at the meeting on the day of the game, and the guy, Conte, said, "Do you have something to say to the team? Do you want to apologise to the team?" And he's laughing, Emerson, while he's telling the story. He asked the other guys who'd arrived late too, and the guy said, no, just sorry. And then I don't know what got into Richarlison. He was supposed to apologise to the group and to Conte, right? And then he said, I think I need more minutes, as in game time. I think he understood it that the guy asked if he had anything, just something to talk about. So he started to saying that the formation we played in was beep. We're beeping out the word that he actually said there. And he said a couple of things. So kind of the YouTuber Fred turns to Richarlison, who's also kind of laughing, and he says, I came out saying everything that came to mind. I need more minutes. This formation is no good. I didn't adapt. This formation is beep. And then he repeated that in English just to make sure that we were well aware what he actually said to Conte. He said, I just started talking. And then the guys behind me started laughing. And I said, what am I doing here? I didn't understand what he had asked. And I just started saying what I'd already rehearsed. So to put this into context, obviously, this was the season when Richarlison had come along for 60 million, had been pretty poor, let's be honest. One Premier League goal in the entire season. And clearly he had a few feelings as to why that was the case. You know, he was playing in a team that had Harry Kane and Son in there, so he wasn't going to get a lot of minutes as it was. And look, he's had a good season this year around. You know, 10 goals, 3 assists, 22 Premier League games. He's doing absolutely fine this season. I'm intrigued to kind of know your opinion on this. I'll give you mine as well. Where obviously this has gone out now, and Twitter's doing its thing, or X, whatever one who's called it nowadays, where it's like, oh yeah, he's stuck it to Conte. What do you think? Is it something that's just kind of a funny moment, or is it something a little bit that maybe shouldn't have happened?
It can be both, I think, can't it? It is brilliant. From a fan's perspective, just hearing these little stories, I think it's little things behind the scenes that you don't hear about often enough. The kind of the personality behind footballers. It's all very much, I'm going to play football on a Saturday and train on a Tuesday and a Thursday or whatever, and then try and not say anything to the press because they're so mollycoddled and they're not allowed to speak their mind about anything. So as you said there, it's when they join up for international breaks, it's always quite exciting for us journalists, even though we're not doing the interviews ourselves, because they do seem to speak their minds to their own nation's journalists. They're kind of free to do so. Although Spurs, as you say, probably wouldn't like them to be free to do so. So yeah, it's a brilliant little anecdote, and it's a piece of fun, but at the same time, as you say there, it does go back into how things just clearly were not right behind the scenes at Spurs under Antonio Conte. To have a player like that speaking out in front of the entire group to his manager, whether he understood or not, there's got to be something in your brain that goes, should I really be saying this to my manager? I mean, I wouldn't go and talk about certain aspects of life at Reach to my boss and really speak my mind about it in an open forum. I might say it one-on-one and give my opinion, but yeah, it's a bit of both for me. It just does hark back to just how bad things had got under Conte last season, and just it felt a little bit rudderless. And if a player can talk like that to his manager in front of the rest of the group, it doesn't bode well for your future. And yeah, Conte was gone. Do we know when exactly this happened? No,
we don't. I mean, to be honest, I was trying to look at the season and like when he'd started matches, like was there a direct correlation when he kind of bombed him out of the team? And it's like he didn't really start many matches anyway. It's like it could have been any time. I'd imagine it was, like you say, towards the... I remember Romero did an interview on the summer tour last year where he spoke about coming back from the World Cup and really noticing a big kind of fracture within the squad. So perhaps that's when it was after that the World Cup return. So yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle. Yes, I do think it kind of shows the ship, I guess, that Conte was running that wasn't quite heading in the direction that it was meant to, and everyone wasn't really on board.
That was ship rather than the word that Richarlison used, yes.
I'm not suggesting what word Richarlison used, but yeah, definitely ship. I can just imagine Richarlison in the moment being like, really? You just want me to say anything? I did love the fact as well that he's been in England, 8 years now, and he still doesn't really speak much English. It's like he just can't really. I think it's there, and from what I can tell, I think he can understand the bulk of what you say, but he's not enough yet for us to do like an English interview with him. I think Emerson's actually overtaken him. Emerson's English is coming on leaps and bounds. But yeah, Richarlison, I mean, God, I can remember when he came to Watford. It was years back, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was 8 years.
I didn't even think about it, how you've just said it there. Like the way Conte said, have you got anything to say? And Richarlison's clearly thought, oh, well, anything? Okay, I'll go with this then.
Exactly. He's just thought, yes, all this stuff I've rehearsed, I've wanted to say, I've been saying into the mirror, I'm going to tell you. And you can just imagine all the teammates just cracking up behind him. And I mean, the fact, I guess, that they were cracking up rather than all just looking aghast what was going on maybe said everything. So yeah, it's difficult in terms of, yeah, there's a part of me that kind of feels it wasn't probably the most professional moment in the world. But then also, if Richarlison thinks he's in an open arena where they're allowed to air their grievances, which does happen a lot of football clubs. There are a lot of managers that encourage that from their players. I can't imagine Antonio Conte being one of those. No. But yeah, it was a funny little moment. And yeah, definitely, I can't see that happening with Postecoglou. I think there's that kind of nice element, I think, with Postecoglou of, they feel they've got this kind of paternal relationship with him, yet also comes with that a little bit of, I'm not going to speak back, probably. But yeah, so yeah, that was an interesting kind of set of quotes to come out to. And it's only like a teaser bit of that, of the proper full video as well. So there's a lot more to come. I think, looking at it, I think Richarlison talks about the struggles that he had, mental health struggles and his injury problems as well. So it should be quite an interesting one. But yeah, very much I think was off the books, and they headed off to Emerson's house and did a little bit kickabout in the back garden as well. So yeah, I think he said, Fred, that it's like a couple of weeks' time we'll get the full video on that. So who knows what other revelations will come out. But yeah, that was a very interesting one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, as you say, to find out what more is said, because yeah, we've gone in a little bit on football.london in terms of the struggles that Richarlison has had, and he's spoken out a little bit about the mental health problems he's had and the injury that he had that was affecting him. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how much more he opens up on that and what comes out of it, because it's clear to see he's kind of turned a corner this season at Spurs. He's been fantastic. Obviously, not scored in the last couple of games, but has been fantastic this season when he's been given the opportunity to kind of fill those big boots that Harry Kane left behind.
Yeah, I'd say fantastic in relation to last season, definitely.
Yes,
absolutely. And yeah, there's a lot more to come from him still, I think. I'm intrigued to see when he comes back from his injury, because that was one of the big things at the weekend as well. Every single person involved was telling us something completely different. Postecoglou told us 3 to 4 weeks in the press conference ahead of the game, Richarlison's knee injury was going to keep him out. Then he did a Spurs club interview, which went out just, we saw it after the press conference finished. In that, he said 2 to 3 weeks. Then the Brazil manager later that day picked Richarlison in his Brazil squad and said he'll be back next week. Then Richarlison said after the game to a Brazilian journalist from ESPN Brazil, "Oh, I'm pretty much back in training now. I'll be back hopefully next week," which he's then apparently told this Fred guy as well, I think. And it's like, you could just see Postecoglou was asked about it after the game. He was just like, "I'm not a doctor. I'm told this. This is what I say." So I wouldn't be stunned if we see Richarlison on the bench at Villa Park. I don't think that's out of this world by the way that people are talking. But then again, we've also had a lot of players that think they're way farther ahead than they are, often with international duty coming up as well to kind of prove a point. But yeah, it's all happening around Richarlison. Didn't even play. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We have seen Bentancur and Mickey van der Ven come back earlier than expected this season. So yeah, you could be right. Richarlison could be part of the squad on Sunday, which we'll talk about a bit later on, but it's looking like quite a tasty Sunday for those of us that will be sitting in front of the television, at least. Back to last weekend, we're getting to the Crystal Palace game. I mentioned it at the very beginning there. Spurs coming from behind again. Timo Werner finally getting off the mark. Christian Romero with a header. And then Son Heung-min with the third. 3 goals in the last 12 minutes, I think it was, to come from behind. Shouldn't really have been behind against Crystal Palace, let the truth be told, but that's the situation we found ourselves in. What was the atmosphere like in the stadium, and what's it been like the last few weeks, kind of having to watch Spurs go behind and try and force their way back into matches?
Yeah, it's all a very familiar feeling, isn't it? It's like last season that in that respect. Yeah, the atmosphere was an interesting one. We were wondering when it got to half time, because obviously it was 0-0. They'd had a couple of chances, but nothing major. I think there was Werner running through, and the one where Emerson just hit it ahead of Son. But it wasn't too much going on. And we were kind of wondering, like, oh, are we going to get the boos at half time that we used to get in the Conte era? But they didn't come. It was a strange game. There's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it from the fact that it felt like a bit of another uninspiring first half, which we've had a few of in recent weeks. The other way to look at it is that Spurs just had to be patient against a very, very organised, ridiculously defensive team. It was quite interesting. George Sessions from PA told me, because he covers Palace quite a lot as well. He said, it's going to be a really open game. Palace are going to be really open. And I was taking the mickey out of him at halftime. I was like, where's that openness? I think literally they put all 10 outfield players behind the ball for most of it. It was meant to be like I think it was a 3-4-3 formation. It ended up just being a back five sat across their penalty area. So, we've seen over this same weekend, you saw Liverpool go to Forest and have to get a 99th minute winner. You saw Man United playing one of the most defensive performances I've seen from a bigger team at the Etihad, and City had to, pretty much similar circumstances, going behind, ended up winning 3-1 with late goals, the bulk of them. So yeah, that's the other way of looking at it. Was it just, I've seen people on social media saying, you've got to find a way through these teams. It's not good enough. And you kind of think, well they did. That's the point. They were patient and they eventually got through. And I do think that Werner first half chance, which obviously was a biggie, he gets that. That's the key to unlocking the entire game. It probably ends up 4-0, 5-0 maybe even at that point, because once Palace were opened up in the second half, they pretty much fell apart from then on. They were so easy to get through the middle of, as we saw with Romero just kind of waltzing through the middle to head in the second goal. So yeah, I've got some of the stats here, which was a club record in the Premier League. Spurs made 728 passes. I think it was 732 completed in all. To Palace's 156. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Sorry, was that 4 passes? Only 4 passes that went astray? Did you say there in the
No,
entire game?
I think there was a discrepancy in the original kind of working out of the passes, and I think completed passes was 732. Right. I think, yeah, no, it wasn't just 4 that went astray, but it was very high. It was something like, it was in the 90s, the pass success rate, which kind of shows how they were quick, sharp, short passes more than anything. But yeah, Palace have 156. Possession was 78%, and in the first half it was 82%. They just didn't come out of their box really. And like you say, the one time they did, they end up hitting a very nice free kick. I'm still unsure who was to blame, whether it was Vicario being a bit kind of too far across his goal, whether it was just a rubbish wall, or whether it was just a terrific free kick. But that was their one real chance of the game. The only other one I can remember that wasn't offside was Vicario ran out and denied someone at their feet. I can't remember if it was Ayew or Mateta. I can't remember who it was now. But yeah, they offered very, very little. And yeah, ultimately Spurs got the job done. I guess that's probably all that matters in the end.
Yeah, I think from like fans' perspective, there's been many occasions where it's felt like the nice possession-based football and moving the ball from side to side, trying to work the openings and trying to find the pockets of space. It can sometimes get a little bit dull if we're playing the ball side to side far too slowly. I get frustrated when we're not moving the ball quickly enough. That's how you unlock defenses. You've got to play that. You can't just be slow with it going across this pitch. You've got to create the spaces yourself, essentially. And I get it. You can't, unless you're Man City, you can't just be quick and on it for a full 90 minutes. There's going to be times when you're going to kind of drop off, and the ball does move a little bit slower. We've seen it a few times this season when you're kind of coming out from the back and it's just a bit slow to get forward. But yeah, with, as you say, 5 at the back for Palace, and it felt like almost not 2 banks of 4. It was a bank of 5 and a bank of 4 that Spurs are trying to get through. And you're absolutely right that the one big chance with Werner, if that goes in, I think it does change the game. We've said it before with Spurs, haven't we? If Spurs get 1-0 up, the way Postecoglou likes to play football, you would expect a second and a third to follow, just purely because the other team would then come out a bit more and have to play a bit more football than sitting behind the ball, unless they think, well, we'll try and stick it out for 1-0 till the last 10 minutes and then see if we can go after Spurs. But yeah, it's just the pace, getting the ball forward quicker and moving the ball around the pitch a bit quicker, I think, is the frustration from some supporters. But yeah, I don't see why you would boo at 0-0 against a team like Palace. You always know that something's going to improve after the break with Postecoglou sides.
Yeah. I must stress they didn't end up booing. We just kind of thought they would, but yeah, it's a tricky one because I understand the whole kind of it's got to move quicker and it's got to show more urgency, and that's kind of what it does feel like to see. But ultimately, if Palace aren't coming out of their shape, it's so difficult to kind of tease them out of it. You kind of need, if anything, more than quick passing, I'd say you need someone with that little bit of magic to dribble through a couple of players and create space for someone else. And that's probably where the likes of Basuma needs to do that, maybe. Bentancur, we know he can do it, but he's still not quite that kind of player at the moment. He will be that player again. It's just not quite there yet. And there were a few times when Destiny Udogie went on these terrific raids down the left-hand side and then did nothing with the ball at the end of it. He went through a weird phase in the game where he wasn't really passing to Werner after he'd missed that chance. Yep. I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was just kind of maybe this subconscious thinking, I'm not going to put that there. I'm going to put it somewhere else. The Werner chance. Did you think he was going to miss it?
Yes.
It's sad, isn't it? But there was so much pressure on him. He used a great expression. I don't know if I've got it written down here. It's a German expression. He said, I don't know if I've got it here. It was essentially along the lines of having felt the ballast on his shoulders, which essentially means the weight of the world on his shoulders in a way. It's a German thing. And you could see it. It was such a long run. He took it really well. Took the ball into his pass superbly from Son's pass. But yeah, I was like you. I was just like, oh no.
The thing for me watching it is just he doesn't. I think when he runs through, and you're right, his control was brilliant. He's got the ball in exactly the right place, and you're thinking that, well, he's done everything right here, considering the player that he can be when he could kind of mess it up going forward and get the ball stuck under his feet, sort of thing. I feel bad saying that about a Tottenham player, but there we go. But he seemed to do everything right, and he only seemed to, when I looked at it, he only looked up once when he'd kind of made that second touch, and then he's obviously decided then he's going to go around the keeper, and he's looking at the floor to go right around the keeper. And it's like, well, no, look at what the keeper's doing. If you look at the keeper and see that he's going to go with you, you don't then try and go around the keeper. Just play it past him. He's such a frustrating player, and I'm not one of these to get on his back and say, oh, he's useless, he's not good, because I always said when he was at Chelsea, I felt like there was a player in there, and I think I might have said it when I've been on a podcast before with you guys. There is something about, he's got something. He just needs to hone that final touch, that final moment, and he'll actually come out. But it's just so frustrating seeing him run at defenses sometimes, or not, and knowing that he's not going to have that final impact. Admittedly, he did score a goal, obviously, which is great. He actually came from behind the defence to kind of put that ball in the net. So his kind of his vision and anticipation of the ball across the box from Brennan Johnson was obviously very good. So yeah, it's just the niggle. It's that niggle, and I think it's there for everyone. Do we think he's actually going to score a goal when he goes clean through against the goalkeeper? Unfortunately, not.
I think it's confidence. I do. Even though he's very experienced, what is he, 27, around that kind of age now? I still think he's such a confidence player, because we know, I mean, we saw it with Sonny in the third goal. You take that shot early. You take the shot before the keeper's properly set himself, and you've got either side to put into. It's what Kane used to do over and over again, run through and just knock it straight in the bottom corner. And as soon as he went for rounding the keeper, you're like, oh, you're not only kind of prolonging this, you're allowing a defender to get back as well. There's so many other aspects to doing that. But, he scored goals galore at Leipzig. He was clearly a player that could go through and score these goals. I just think at the moment, in his own words, he's kind of got the weight of the world on his shoulders sometimes when he runs through and goal. But the goal he scored will do him the world of good. And I think, he just needs a few more little moments like that, because and Postecoglou said this after the game, he kept attacking his fullback. That's brilliant. That's what you want. That is kind of my frustration sometimes with Spurs play, is that the wingers don't go at their fullbacks enough. And he was doing that and constantly really getting in behind him, which is exactly what we were saying earlier. That's the key to getting behind a kind of a very solid back five. But then it's his decision making. That's when he needs to. It's the same with Udogie. Both of them, I don't think, have got that partnership yet on the left-hand side. It's knowing what to do. You know, we've seen Sonny get to the touchline, pull it back for so many players. I think Johnson's getting very good at getting to the touchline and pulling it back to people as well. And I think it will come for Werner. I mean, what's he played? 6 games, something like that. So, yeah, he does come with this weight of his past in the Premier League. But like I say, if you keep going back in his past, there's a real goal scorer there. I think if anyone's going to unlock it, it's Postecoglou. But yeah, mixed day for him. But ultimately, first goal at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. He wanted to celebrate as well. He kind of ran off to celebrate and realised no one had joined him because it was 1-1 and they wanted to score another goal. And he was like, "Oh yeah," and he like ran back to the centre circle. He's got this funny superstition before the game. Every time they're about to do the team huddle, he's all the way over on the left wing by the touchline, kind of going through his little kind of routine superstitions, whatever it is he does. I don't know if there's a religious aspect to it as well, maybe, and things like that. But yeah, it's usually Maddison has to shout across at him, like, "Come on, get in the huddle," kind of thing. It's a funny little thing. We thought the first time he just didn't realise they were doing a huddle, but now you can see it's a very deliberate routine he has to go through before he can kick off a match. Players got so many superstitions. You see the ones that touch the grass when they come on. See the ones that have to be at the back of the line of players when they come on. There's so many weird little things. But yeah, that did make me chuckle. But yeah, hopefully the start of a kind of a positive curve for him now.
Yeah, he was. I was frustrated yesterday when I'd written up some of Sonny's quotes from after the game about Werner, and there were no photos in Getty of Sonny and Werner together. Like, so I was like, why didn't they celebrate a goal together? Why is there no photos here? I eventually found one of them both on the bench when they were taken off. But yeah, you want to celebrate your first goal for your new club, don't you? But at 1-1 with 10 minutes to go, you kind of have to just get back in position and go again to win the game, don't you?
Yeah, he was very honest on him, Sonny, as he has been, as he did about Richarlison a few weeks back when he said he's got to score the goals while I'm away. He was very much with Werner, no over-celebrating now. That's his first. We want him to score more goals. I love that. I love the captain that Sonny's becoming. I mean, I'm guessing, Korean people know this with the national team over there, that's exactly what he does in South Korea. But for Spurs, we're really seeing him step up into this leadership role, and people are listening to him. It's terrific.
It does feel like that we've got the options up front as well at the minute. Like we're going to talk about Brennan Johnson now coming off the bench and making an impact in a number of games recently. If Richarlison's around, then you can bring him on, or he starts. So you can bring Kulusevski on if he hasn't started, or if he starts in the number 10 role, then Maddison's there, and Werner can come on as a sub or start games. And they all offer something a little bit different, and how we can play. So Postecoglou has got those options available to him to change things up in the forward line now. And yeah, I think you want to talk about Johnson and how he stops being super sub at the minute. I think how does he get out of that role?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you talk about those forward options. Brian Hill can't even get on the bench.
Of course, yeah.
At the moment, he's just kind of watching on. Dane Scarlett got on the bench on Saturday. Yeah, with Brennan Johnson, I think it's a manager saying something that's come to pass. Postecoglou said that this is a guy that's pretty much started almost every match for Forest. He's constantly on the pitch. So he's had a few experiences now being on the bench and seeing how a game is playing out, seeing it from a different perspective. And pretty much every time he's brought into a game, he knows exactly how to impact it and what to do, what the team are lacking, what he needs to provide. I mean, on Saturday, he just launched straight into it and harassed them. And I mean, with the goal, with Anderson, he was all over him. He didn't know what to do with him, ended up losing the ball. And then I think it was Lerma tried to tackle him, didn't go in. It was a terrible tackle or attempt at a tackle. And Johnson just kind of smashed through the two of them. And it's a lovely ball. You see Sonny steps back to kind of take a pass that would maybe come further into the box, but Johnson looks across. And if anything, Sonny's, in doing that, is also very cleverly taking two defenders away with him. And that creates the space for Werner at the back post. So does that. And then even for Sonny's goal, it's obviously it's not a a direct assist in terms of I meant to pass it through to him, but he was getting his body in there, trying to make a challenge, and it ends up kind of deflecting the ball into Sonny's path, and he runs off. So you can't ask for more from a sub really than coming on and making such a huge impact, 2 assists. And yeah, does he, can he now shake off that tag? Being a super sub, the old Solskjaer kind of tag from back in the day. I personally think he's done enough to... It's difficult. I was about to say he's done enough to start, but then Werner played well and scored a goal. And Kulusevski's an interesting one. Even in the games where he doesn't look like he's doing a lot offensively, if you take him out of that match, you realise how much kind of work he did that others might not do. It would be a big call, I think, to take Kulusevski out and put Johnson in at Villa Park with all the strength he has and the work rate and the fact that he can kind of come into midfield a little bit and kind of create more numbers there too. So it's a tough one for Johnson, but he's doing everything right. That's the key thing. There's so much belief in him in that club. Postecoglou loves him, feels like he's going to be a terrific player. Sonny adores him. I mean, the interview he did on him afterwards, he was just saying like how good he's going to be. And he said this previously, he thinks he's going to be like one of the best players in the Premier League. And one of the best players that Wales has had. And bear in mind, Wales has, produced Gareth Bale, so he's done rather well for himself before he retired. I can understand where he's coming from. I've said this before. He's got all the tools, Johnson, to be a bit of a superstar, really. He's got the pace. He's quite clever with the ball as well. His technique's very good. Decision-making is a thing that comes with experience. He is only 22 still. And I think, where's his stats here? I've got his stats recently have been really good. I think it's 6. Here we are. Yeah, 6 goal involvements in his past 9 Premier League matches, 4 assists and 2 goals in the last 9. That's exactly what you want from a 22-year-old coming in, making an impact. So, he's definitely heading on the right path. And he's given Postecoglou some real kind of selection issues, and that's exactly what you're meant to do if you're coming off the bench.
I think it was what he did for the goal just made me sit up and take notice because, as he harassed Joachim Andersen off the ball, put himself right in there, used his strength, which I don't think many Spurs fans thought he had a lot of, and then got past Lerma, as you say, and just that kind of desire was, and I know he's a young lad, but it's not what we kind of saw in the first few weeks of the season when he joined. He was not timid, but he was kind of a winger that you just expect to get the ball and run with it and make part. You weren't expecting him to kind of get involved and do the defensive duty that he might be asked to do. But the fact that he's gone on the pitch there and said, you know what, I'm going to put myself about here. I'm going to win the ball back high and I'm going to go and lay chances on a plate for my teammates. He absolutely did that. And if he's adding that to his game already at 22, the kind of, you do wonder how good he can be moving forward.
Yeah, it's the aggression. That's what Postecoglou asked for.
Yeah.
I do think there was a period after he got the hamstring injury. He missed about a month or so, and I think he came back and he was really wary of really kind of opening up his legs and running at people for fear of kind of doing it again. And I think now he's maybe reached this little period where he's like, okay, no, trust my body again. We're fine. Let's go for it. And he's throwing himself into stuff. You look at the youth, the age of some of these players on the pitch. He's 22. Van de Ven, who was superb again, is 22. Sarr, who's got a bit of a back injury at the moment, so that's why he didn't start. He's only 21. So Doggy, 21 as well, I think. It's just crazy, the age of some of these players. I mean, even Romero's like experienced head. I think he's only 25.
Yeah.
It's mad. And Porro's 24 when he comes back. Even Emerson's not that old either.
No, I'm just remembering Johnson probably should have scored as well, shouldn't he? The ball, was it Son put the ball across the box and put the ball over the bar?
Yes, he did. It wasn't quite Haaland-esque, but it was.
No.
He
could have missed that was from Haaland, by the way. Jesus,
that was horrendous. Yeah, he made up for it, to be fair, but
he did.
Yeah. Johnson definitely it kind of surprised him a little bit when it shouldn't have. Another positive step for him, and he keeps having these big impacts in front of that South stand as well. It was interesting, again, giving a kind of a nod of the hat to George from PA. I wasn't there at the Wolves game, was it a couple of weeks ago now, and apparently Wolves won the toss and made Spurs attack that end in the first half. And I thought that was really interesting that now going back to attacking that end. I mean, how many goals have come in the second half in front of that south stand? It's becoming its own. We talk about a fortress and a stadium becoming a fortress. I think that stand is becoming its own like cop type thing. It's getting a reputation for where Spurs do their late damage. So yeah, if I'm a team who wins the toss at the start of the game, I'm probably doing exactly the same.
I'd forgotten that actually, because when watching the Wolves game, as soon as they did it at the start of the Wolves game, I thought, oh, they're making us turn around, and I'd forgotten until you said it that they actually did that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Just a little psychological aspect.
Yeah,
it might seem like nothing, but the proof's there with the amount of goals that have been scored at that end and the limbs flying, as they call it, when the south stand erupts and everyone's going mad. And yeah, I watched the match day uncut that Spurs put out. It's just incredible in front of that 17,500 people just suddenly erupting as one when the ball hits the net. That's what football's all about. It really is.
It's quite something being in that stand as well, to be fair. So yeah. Cool. We're probably about halfway through the pod now. Did you want to talk us through the benefits of NordVPN, our sponsors, Ali?
It is that time of the show. As I've said in recent weeks, it's always fascinating to kind of have people come back to us and telling us like how helpful it's been to them. And I saw on Twitter the other day, or X, I keep forgetting to call it X because it just sounds weird. Sungmo Lee, the South Korean journalist we know very well, he was trying to watch the Spurs Palace game, and I just found it quite funny. Someone underneath on there advised him to listen to what we say on the podcast and get NordVPN. It would help him to watch it from. I think he's in Japan. It's become its kind of own little thing now, and that is because we're not just kind of pushing it because they're on board. We're pushing it because it's something that I have certainly used and have had kind of real success with it in trying to work-wise, and also watching shows, watching films, whatever I want to watch around the world, and also the security aspects as well, because NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. No buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. And not only that, but the outlay on a NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run. That's because you could purchase streaming services, like I said, or you could book, let's say, flights or holidays, whatever, from another country rather than doing it from this country. You can just make your device think it's somewhere else. And if you're out and about abroad, or even over here and you're using public Wi-Fi, it's got aspects of that help you a little bit security-wise, stopping people taking things off your phone. So that means you're paying out for Nord, but you're actually saving money overall. There's a whole host of other benefits from signing up to NordVPN, so why not give it a go? To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast when you get it. The link, if you missed it there, is in the episode description box.
Well said. Are we seeing the best of Spurs again now? Obviously lost to Wolves a couple of weeks ago. But are we seeing the best of Spurs now because the three leaders are back in the side? Obviously, we've had Romero out suspended for a number of games this season and a little injury. Maddison injured. Sonny at the Asian Cup. Is having those three back key to kind of Spurs performing and moving forward, do we think?
It will be. I wouldn't say they're absolutely on song yet. I mean, they've only lost 3 of their last 11 Premier League games, so they're not doing too badly at all. I think a lot of those players, especially Maddison, it's about the sharpness. But I do think the leaders obviously played their part. Obviously, Maddison and Romero combined for the second goal, and then Sonny scores the third. I think Postecoglou said, that's what you want. You want your leaders to step up when you need them the most. It's interesting you saying about Romero and missing the games this season. Do you know how many yellow cards he's got this season?
Maybe 1 or 2?
A little bit more. 4. Okay. 4 all season. So I think that red card against Chelsea was so ridiculous, and he could have got 2 red cards in the same game, that we've kind of just I'm lumping myself in this absolutely. We kind of think like, oh, another season where he's been a bit of a kind of a crazy Argentinian defender.
Well, there was that the stat after the first 10 games, neither he nor Mickey van der Ven had conceded a foul, had they, in the first 10 games of the season? So it did feel like that Chelsea, I say moment, those two Chelsea moments were a bit out of character from what Romero had done previously in the season.
Absolutely, honestly, it's. I think I've got his ones from last season here somewhere. Last season. No, I haven't got them here. I thought I did. But yeah, I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of yellow cards he had and red card. I think he's had something like 4 red cards since he's come to Spurs. But yeah, 4 yellow cards is just incredible. And he actually spoke about it. It was a really good program interview, the match day program, where he spoke about how he's worked on that discipline side and eradicating things in his game, and just kind of making better decisions, I think. And yeah, you can see it now with him. And I loved what that goal meant to him when he scored it. The passion, grabbing the shirt, all of that. We talk about kind of Conte earlier, and we talk about the way the team was. I personally feel that Romero was potentially heading towards the exit at some point. I just kind of feel like he wasn't particularly happy at the club. And I think ambition-wise, this guy's a World Cup winner. You can argue about his disciplinary record and whether we were getting to see the best of him or not. But I kind of think that there was a feeling of, I can be doing better than this. This is a bit of a kind of a mess here. This is very much me putting thoughts in his head that may not have been there. But I just feel like it's complete contrast this year. The way he speaks about Postecoglou, he's got such high regard for him, and belief in what they're doing, and belief now in the way the club's going. It's just a kind of a totally different thing for him. A whole different ideology in the way he's playing. And I love the fact that Richarlison, even with his dodgy knee, sprinted up the pitch to celebrate with him. How far have we come from that canteen meeting when he first signed Richarlison, when it was so awkward? And now, they've absolutely, you see it on the pitch as well, they've got each other's back all of the time. So yeah, I love that about Romero, that and all it took in a way was someone giving him the vice captaincy. It's a master stroke of a move. It really has told him, okay, you're 25, you're a World Cup winner, show everyone else that. You be the leader. You've got a kind of a group of South Americans there and Spanish-speaking players as well, with Brian Hill, Pedro Porro. Unite everyone. Don't make that a little clique over there. Make it all one big group, and you kind of be their voice. And that's exactly what he's done. And Postecoglou said when Sonny was away, Romero would go around the club, talk to people, make sure they're all right, play the captain role to perfection. And I think now, like you say, right at the top of this, to have a leader in the back line, to have a leader in your midfield, and a leader up front, I don't think it's any coincidence that, you're going to be able to get through games like that when there's someone at each kind of line of the team making sure. And Vicario as well. Vicario is becoming a bit of a leader behind it all. So, it will play its part. And the sharper Maddison gets especially. And I think there's still, Bentancur and Basuma to step up as well as potential leaders in there. And even Van der Ven. I think Van der Ven's a young leader in the making as well. So, it all points really well to the future, but it's playing some part right now, but it will play a bigger part, I would say, hopefully, injuries aside, maybe in a month's time, as it all hits the business end of the season. That's when you'll see them come to the fore.
Yeah, a leader in each position of the team. It's almost like Postecoglou knows what he's doing, isn't it? With those 3. 11 yellow cards he got last season. And then two that turned into red, 2 were second yellows that turned into reds. So he was averaging 1 every 3 games last season, and the 4 yellows this year. It's almost 1 every 6. So a real improvement in discipline, bar that crazy Chelsea game, really, for Christian Romero.
Absolutely. And I mean, Sonny's goal involvements are ridiculous now. 19 goal involvements in 23 Premier League games. That's mad. 13 goals, 6 assists. I think he's 5 behind Haaland now after his goal the other day. I kind of in my head thought he'd be like way behind, but he's not. He gets 2 or 3 goals in a game and suddenly he's right up there amongst it. I mean, they're going to meet a striker, unfortunately, on Sunday who's just got the most ridiculous stats right now. Ollie Watkins is just crazy. 21 goals and 12 assists he's got.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I know. I remember when Spurs seriously looked at him as well and were kind of just put off by the price tag because he was so untried and untested. And fair play.
His movement and the way he brings other players into the action is just incredible when you watch Aston Villa. I'm kind of looking forward to and not looking forward to the game this weekend in equal measure. But there'll be another podcast to talk about Villa later in the week, so we won't go too much into this weekend. But you brought up the midfield there when we were talking about Romero and obviously Maddison being a captain. I felt like on Saturday there was maybe a 10-15 minute period where I thought, oh, this is Bentancur back to his best. He was picking up little pockets of space, taking the ball off the defence and getting Spurs moving through the midfield. And then it kind of dropped off again. And I know we're going to have to be patient with him. He is coming back from a very long-term injury plus an extra injury thanks to Matty Cash. It'd be interesting to see what sort of reception he gets.
I wondered whether we're going to bring up Matty Cash. Yeah.
But yeah, that just little moments that kind of brought a smile to my face with Bentancur. And I thought Bissouma was really good on Saturday. Sarr, obviously, you say little back injury. I was surprised he wasn't involved as much as he was, but feels like the midfield's kind of it's getting there after the kind of falling away a little bit earlier in the season.
Yeah, if anything, it's about finding the right blend now.
Yeah,
we've kind of gone from like who's fit, who can we actually play in the midfield? You know, oh, Decky's going to have to come back and play there because we've got no one else, kind of thing. And now we're in at a stage where it's really about getting that balance right, because I did think Bissouma was a lot better. I think he's still not dominating and driving with the ball as much as I'd like him to do, but he is defensively just essentially when he's in control of the ball, so are Spurs. I mean, we talked about the passing stats at the beginning. Romero and he got 131 and 128 touches of the ball between them, and their pass is 124 and 115. That's so much more than anyone else on the pitch, those two.
He's the one, isn't he? When we talk about not how slow the build-up is, he's the one that you're talking about. If we can get someone driving at defence to then force the mistakes and force the openings, he's the one that Spurs need to do that.
That's it. If he can go on a Dembele-esque run through the middle, take two players out, shock horror, someone else is free. If you're taking two players out, suddenly they can't be man-to-man anymore. And it's just something I'm sure Postecoglou will want to see more of him. And Bentancur was doing this last season. Bentancur was so many times late in games, was driving into the box and coming up with important moments. I mean, he did it at Old Trafford this season as well. But he's just got to get back to where he was. I've seen some people saying, like, writing him off. It's like, no. You just been out for like, he played about, I think he started one game in almost 10, 11 months or something. It's just like, you're never going to be the player you are probably this season, I'd say. I think it will be next season, which I think I said before, that was what the Spurs sports science staff felt, that next season we were going to see kind of him back at his peak again. And Sarr, I watched him at the end of the game. He sat down really uncomfortably on the pitch. He was like bouncing up and down as if he was getting jolts of pain through his back. Physio went over to him. Postecoglou went over to him. That was the only reason I asked about him after the game. Otherwise, we'd have probably never known. And I just thought, that looked a bit weird. And he said, it's a back problem he's had since the coming back from the Africa Cup of Nations. He said it doesn't stop him training, but he's definitely restricted. And I guess if you're restricted anyway in a Premier League game, you can't really start it. It'd be great if he was in a position 8 days on to start against Villa, because I think the logic behind playing Bentancur, because you've got a more defensive fullback in Emerson Royale who did well defensively, but he's not going to give you the raiding, driving runs that Udogie does on the other side. So maybe the way you replace that, I guess in Postecoglou's mind, was that Bentancur would be a bit of a playmaker, play some clever balls in between the lines and things like that. He didn't really do that. I guess so. The flip side to that is you get Sarr to make runs, and he's constantly intertwining with Kulusevski, then almost doing the fullback's job, I suppose, in terms of the attacking aspect. So it's interesting to kind of see how that works and how it's going to work against Villa. Maddison, like I say, still coming back to sharpness as well. With Bentancur, he had a bit of a mixed game in terms of really nice interception that set up the Werner chance, like got the ball to Sonny to put it forward, but then he was the one that kind of was a bit lost in Eze's slipstream and brought him down for the free kick. It was one of those where a few journalists were like, "Oh, that's a clever tactical foul," and I was like, "But it's in a rubbish place." It's like, I get it, but I almost would have rather let him run towards the centre backs and deal with it than stick him right in front. And yeah, I can claim that was not with hindsight. That you can ask the journalist said. I said that in the moment before he took the free kick. Yeah, it's a midfield in the making right now, but it's got a hell of a lot of potential to it. You know, Postecoglou wanted to see Bentancur and Basuma together. That was one he admitted was a planned partnership for him in that midfield. But then you've got Sarr, who, injury aside, is doing everything to push himself into the reckoning in that. And, you know, Højbjerg, when he comes off the bench, doesn't look bad at all. I feel for Skippy a bit. It's really difficult. I do wonder whether homegrown numbers are going to stuff Skippy next season in terms of Spurs might have to keep him around because they've got so few kind of club-trained homegrown players. But I think Skippy needs game time next season. He needs to go somewhere and play as a number 6, not as a makeshift number 8. And yeah, there's I mean, Lucas Bergvall to come as well as a number 8. And, you know, as I mentioned about the special guest, it was the sporting director at Djurgården, Boss Anderson. He was there as Daniel Levy's special guest with a few other, I think, people from Djurgården in the chairman's suite. They're trying to put together a more formal partnership, Spurs and Djurgården, going forward, where I guess exchange of ideas, potentially young players going in both directions. It'd be quite interesting as well, because obviously Swedish league, you know, they play you know, during the summer and things like that. You could kind of send a player there. I remember Alfie Whiteman went there, Swedish league, and he kind of played from when does their season start? I think it starts in April, the actual league season. So you can kind of get this advantage when you then return for the season that you've been playing while everyone else is still getting ready for the next season. So it could work in that regard. And also you can look at young players like Bergvall coming through. So you've got Bergvall to fit in that midfield. You've got Alfie Devine to come back. You know, Guesty hopefully is going to watch tonight. You've got Jamie Donnelly making his case as well. I'd imagine he'll head off on loan next season. But yeah, that's one area of the team where there's very exciting options for the now and as exciting options for the future, which is very cool.
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see who Postecoglou goes with, because like you just said there with Postecoglou, when looking at it, I would have thought that Basuma and Bentancur would be the two that I would choose. Essentially, if we were going on kind of first choice strength with Maddison alongside them, but Papsar has just done everything right since he's been in the team, and has been a bit of a revelation really for Spurs fans who may not have known too much about him before this season. The kind of moments that he had with Conte, and then you've got
player as well.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at the fact that Højbjerg and Skip could be on their way out in the summer. Who knows what is going to happen with Højbjerg? Is constantly linked with an exit, it seems. And
new agent now. He's joined with Unique Sports Group's Italian division, which has just started up. So I think that's a very interesting timing, especially with the links to Italy as well that he's had.
Yeah. It could, yeah, we could see a kind of a wholesale change in the midfield in the summer, really, couldn't we? If Højbjerg and Skip were to leave, then there's two players there that you can count on to be squad players if needed, that would need to be replaced essentially.
Yeah, I do have my worries about this homegrown side of things, where Spurs have signed a lot of exciting young players, but actually, I wonder if they're going to have to look at British players in the summer, particularly. And yeah, I mean, there was I can't remember if it was George or not came up with the idea of potentially Carl Walker-Peters. You know, he's I think he's reaching that last year where he is still considered club trained for Tottenham or something. Could they end up bringing someone like him back for a not massive fee, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe Emerson heads off because he's, you know, a good player, will give you a lot of attributes, but maybe isn't a Postecoglou fullback. Whereas maybe Carl Walker-Peters actually kind of fits that. It's this interesting one. I'm not advocating the sign. I was kind of a big how do I put this? I was going to say fan. It's probably too strong, but I used to kind of see the merits of Kyle Walker-Peters. So I did feel bad for him when he kind of didn't really get the chances under Pochettino. But it could potentially there. I don't know whether there's a sell-on thing as well with Spurs that would make him even cheaper. I can't remember the deal now. So long ago. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see how they deal with that homegrown issue. I think that's going to have a bit more of a knock-on effect than people realise. You know, we all want players like Neto. Neto would be amazing in this Tottenham team. But when you're kind of struggling to fit in the required amount of players, of homegrown players, you've got to tick all these boxes, especially if you're in Europe, which we all hope is going to be the case. It's something else to take on board.
Yep. All I can say is expect to see a Kyle Walker-Peters story appeering on football.london at some point in the coming weeks as we head towards the transfer window. Before we... Ali loves talking about transfer window stories. In
March, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Before we head off today, one piece of content that always goes up without fail on football.london is the loan roundup, loan players, how they get on each week, and headlined this week around Ivan Perisic. And obviously, he is on loan. He will not be coming back to Spurs because his contract has ended, but he is on loan currently, and made a rare appearance on the bench for Hajduk Split.
Yeah. We've our loan roundup goes up every week, normally on a Monday, sometimes a Tuesday, occasionally if there's a couple of other games we want to fit in. And it's like a really kind of popular thing that people kind of constantly come back for. And it's interesting because we have two players in Perisic and Dyer who are technically Tottenham Hotspur contracted players who are out on loan, yet have no future at Tottenham. They are both set to join those clubs. Whereas people have kind of said, why don't you include Vuskovic, who's just scored his first goal out in Poland, or Bergvall? The truth is, because they're actually not technically Spurs players yet. It's really difficult. It's a strange kind of way of doing it, but we kind of have to stick to the rules. But yeah, Perisic, he was on the bench for Hajduk Split at the weekend, which, bearing in mind, we thought April at a best case was going to be when he might be back. Postecoglou ruled him out for the season entirely, and here he is. To be fair, he and his kind of team around him have constantly been pushing this narrative that he would be back, March, April time, would be back, plenty of time for the Euros. His boss at Hajduk, Mislav Karaglan, said he expressed his desire to be on the bench, to be with the team, and that's positive. He didn't come off the bench, I should stress, but he has been named in the Croatia national squad they've got a couple of games in the United Arab Emirates at the end of this month. So he's been named in that squad. So it's an interesting one. And when I put out the piece, I saw a few people replying well, why did we let him go then? As we've said, though, there are so many options there. And Perisic was very good at the start of the season in the Postecoglou system. But what version of Ivan Perisic he will be in these last months is going to be, we're talking about Bentancur, but I would imagine as a winger, it's even more difficult kind of thing to have that. And it's one of those where, with no disrespect to the Croatian league, but we may see him rack up a few assists and things. And people will probably ask that question again, but I would imagine comparing the Croatian league to the Premier League is probably not quite fair. But, best of luck to him. He's already agreed to be there next season. Like I said about Eric Dyer has also triggered the clause for him now to be at Bayern next season. So that's two players, two higher earning players that we know won't be at Spurs next season because their contracts are at an end. And that kind of lets Spurs plough on for the future. Other notable people in the loan list, Aleja Vilis is still coming off the bench for Sevilla at the moment. Got a few minutes against Real Sociedad. I didn't realise the experience of the players he's playing with there. He's got Sergio Ramos and Jesus Navas in his team as well. I mean, that's some decent players to be learning from. Joe Rodon, obviously Leeds doing well at the moment, although did have a bit of a hiccup at the weekend. They drew 1-1 at Huddersfield. He's essentially kind of hinted a little bit more this week that if they go up Leeds, he would like to. They've got a bit of a Welsh contingent to all stick together and play in the Premier League together. I think Leeds dropped a little bit of a ricket in not being able to agree an option to sign him permanently, because I would imagine last year you're probably getting Joe Rodon for maybe 10, 12 million. I've seen reports now of about 20.
He's been playing very well for them, hasn't he?
It's been superb. I'd say he'll be up there among the best Championship defenders. And he's probably shown that he'll be absolutely fine in the Premier League as well.
Yep.
So I think he'll still have a year left in his deal, I think it is. So, yeah, I'd imagine Spurs will get between 15 and 20 million for him. But whether it'll be Leeds is another thing. They've got to be in a position to go up first. Reguilon had a bit of a mixed week. I watched him. Didn't have the greatest against West Ham. Played okay against Chelsea. He was quite busy, quite involved in a couple of the goals, and he hit the post as well. Tanguy Ndombele is back for Galatasaray. Not really doing much for them. He's getting like the odd 1 minute, 2 minute at the end of matches. Now he's back from a little muscle injury. He's missed a few.
Has he still got a year left on his contract at Spurs? Or is it up this season?
No, I think it's 2025. It is. The trouble is, it's just, where does he... I mean, that's a question for you. Where does he go? what can you do? Well, if you're going to go to Galatasaray and play 644 minutes across the entire season, what can you do with him? How
do you solve a problem like Tanguy Ndombele? How many managers have tried to answer that question? It's so frustrating. I use the word frustrating a lot with Werner, obviously, but he's one of the most frustrating players that I've ever seen at Tottenham, given the amount of talent he has got in his feet, and just not using his brain, not using his brain to kind of forge a really, really strong football career. I don't understand it. But there we go. Yeah, whether he kind of sits in the reserves at Spurs for another year, or who's going to take him on loan after a loan at Galatasaray that's not gone well, as you say. I don't know.
I can hear the frustration. Yeah, trust me, I've been there. People know my Tanguy struggles. Yep. Yeah, I mean, what is he? Near £60 million player, 55-60 million pound player, and he's not even gone to the Turkish Super League and made an impact.
I assume that because the initial deal was it 54 million, and then it was rising to 63, wasn't it? I assume
along those lines. Yeah.
He's not done enough for Spurs to pay that extra 9 million.
Oh, you would hope not. The funniest one for me was always same club, Lyon. They had a sell-on clause with Hugo Lloris. And it was like he then stayed at the club for like 11 years, and they never ever kind of, even when he left on a free, technically. So I don't know what happens with Tanguy. I just don't. It's just about maybe finding a manager with enough of an ego that he believes he can be the one to get something out of him. I mean, are we at the stage now with a year to go where maybe they just cut their losses and just say, well, honestly, mate, you just head off. We'll come to an agreement on the rest of your wages. You find yourself a club. I mean, at Galatasaray, he's got like the whole Spurs contingent are there now. He's got Sergio Aurier's there, Carlos Vinicius, Davinson Sanchez. It's like the Spurs old boys, pretty much. If ever he should feel kind of settled and comfortable in what he's doing, it's just not happening for him. Jed Spence getting minutes, came off the bench for about half an hour against Inter Milan for Genoa on Monday night. He's doing okay there. He's kind of rebuilding himself a little bit, I feel, there. Not starting games at the moment. He was, but in the last 4 games he hasn't. But he is getting game time now. Who else we got? Troy Parrott has had a couple of iffy weeks in terms of more. Excelsior Rotterdam are a team that are right down the bottom of the Eredivisie. They're struggling. The fact that he's got 7 goals and 3 assists in his 21 Eredivisie matches says more about Troy really than anything in a team that is struggling to create chances. Japhet Tanganga's doing very well at Millwall. That's really kind of last 2 games, back-to-back wins. Neil Harris has come in there and made a big difference, I think. And he obviously got his first ever senior goal last week against Southampton. And this week he's been getting praise again from the fans as they beat Watford. We said at the top of the show, Alfie Devine, Ashley Phillips haven't started the last 2 games. They've come on late in them. Hopefully for Guesty tonight up in Sheffield, they will play a little bit more of that. Matthew Craig's been doing very well for Doncaster Rovers, although not the greatest performance from him or them. They lost 3-1 at Walsall, but he's been getting lots of praise there. And Josh Keeley doing very well in the National League for Barnet. I know some people might go, "Oh, National League," but for a goalkeeper, you'd take what you can get. There's so few spots out there for loan players, and he's doing very well there. He's made 11 consecutive starts. Republic of Ireland under-21 international. I'd imagine he comes back, and as he did last summer, goes on the tour. You've got Fraser Forster, obviously, he's out for 2 to 3 months at the moment. You don't know what's going to happen with him long term, although he's got another year left in his deal, how that affects him. Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman, not entirely sure what the future holds for them. They're both, they're both 25 and they're yet to play a game.
Are they both out of contract this summer as well, Alfie Whiteman and Brandon Austin?
I feel like one of them is. I think one of them. I feel like maybe one of them's got an option, and I can't remember which of the two it is. But definitely, future-wise, you've got to make a decision in your career at 25. I think. Obviously, Brandon Austin on the bench at the moment with Fraser Forster out, so that's big experience for him. But yeah, I think they have to look towards the future really, and it may be that Forster's back, and then maybe Josh Keeley comes through as the third choice, perhaps. But yeah, no, that's the loan run. 13 players out on loan, 15 if you do want to count Bergvall and Viskovic, which I'm not allowing you to.
No, absolutely not. They're not Tottenham players just yet, and they're not on loan, so that's why we don't do it. Cool. I think we've got through everything we wanted to get through there. Haven't spoken about Aston Villa, but the Golden Guest podcast with actual guest will be back later in the week to talk about that. I'm sure
you can come on board. We can have all three of us doing it.
If I've got time, I'll come.
On board. Oh, look at that! I'm not washing my hair. Love it.
Oh yeah. Anyone watching on you? It's got very overcast here in my house, so I will. Kind of wrap this up now before it gets really dark in here.
As light and dark for some reason.
Perhaps that's because I'm moving. I don't know. Yeah, it used to happen in your room actually when you used to move towards the microphone, didn't it?
It did. I fixed that with better lighting. But people listening to this on the podcast are thinking, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly. Yeah, we are rambling about rubbish now. So let's call it a day. Thank you everyone for listening. Keep checking out football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. And to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast. The link is in the episode description box.